So my name is Mike. I'm a software engineer with main focus to embedded security, and I implement and integrate the features in our BSP and in the customer-specific versions. So my goal is to use, you can use the functionality very easy and secure, and to find a good balance between usability and security. I'm responsible too for the process in our secure area in the your device. Let's start with a little overview about the regulations. Yes, the first one is the Network and Information System Directive. So very important for companies in the critical infrastructure and has security requirements for the company itself. So we have a differentiation between essential and important entities. So the affected essential entities are, for example, digital infrastructure, transport, energy, water management, and public administration. Additionally, there are important entities like manufacturers for electronic products, medical products, and mechanical engineering. A medium company has more than 50 employees and a large has more than 250 and more than 50 million turnover. So it's important to check if a company is affected from this regulation. The next regulation is the Radio Equipment Directive. So there's a new version published in 2022 with cybersecurity requirements in the Article 3.3. So device manufacturers will have to include network protection, personal data and privacy protection, measures to prevent unauthorized access to the device, and use a user authentication control. But in this webinar, the focus is on the Cyber Resilience Act. So let's start with this. The goal of the Cyber Resilience Act is to make a better protection against cyber attacks and ransomware. So we have every year many attacks to our infrastructure, to our products, and then high damage for the products. So the goal for the European unit was to make a level playing field in all European countries, an equation of legal certainty. And this is by goals for the placing on the market of hardware and software. And we have applications for manufacturers, importers, and distributors. So the cybersecurity are essential requirements across the typical product lifecycle, which can have 2 years or 10 or 20 years for industrial products. So the European Union wants to create harmonized standards which we can follow. And you must make a conformity assessment, which is depends on the level of the risk. And they will install a market surveillance and enforcement. That means they checks the products and the companies to find non-compliance. So you can that's an impact and can make required manufacturers to bring non-compliance to end and eliminate risks. So you can say recall to the products and impose penalties to 15 million euro or up to 2.5% of worldwide turnover. So which products are affected? Affected are products with digital elements that can be hardware products like laptops, mobile phones, network equipment, or hardware components like CPUs. So additional affected are software products, which are placed on the market like operating systems, but not only this, word processing, games, or mobile apps. So which are not covered are open source projects, which have a non-commercial activity. So if a limited company starts an open source project and the open source project is free for the customer, then it's probably affected from the CR. Why? The reason of the limited company is to earn money, and it's not a non-profit association. So we will probably have to wait and see what the courts decide in the end. Not affected are the software as a services, but the backend is affected. The backend is the interface between the service and the user. Not outright exclusions are the other products which have their own regulation, like medical devices, specific aeronautics, they have their own standards. So what manufacturers should do? At first, you must make an assessment of the risks. So like must have an overview about the interfaces, about the use case for the products, and that's what you must protect it in your product. So you have then additional requirements in your product. Very important is the vulnerability handling for your products and a technical overview with the detailed description about the features and the use case and the implementations in your products. So then the following step is to make a conformity assessment, which is combined to the CE marking. And you must make it only one time. You must implement a maintenance system to check the vulnerabilities in your product. Yes, to make updates for your products. And you must report vulnerabilities to the ENISA within 24 hours. And very important is the end of the lifetime of your product. So you must say what is then. So the product must clear, for example, all data, or you have an additional maintenance phase for this. So the product-related essential requirements are, the first one is security by default. You must install the strongest configuration on your device. So for example, you must set it password or other identity login, and you cannot say, yes, the customer must set a password at first, then you must implement the really strongest version at first. Your software or your product should have no exploitable vulnerabilities. Yes, this is a really tricky, because what are exploitable vulnerabilities? So you have a list in the CVE from the list. You can see it, the vulnerabilities, but then you must get the information about exploitable. So the next step is the level of security based on the risk and the use case. It's not so easy to make it, because there are different risks and different use cases of the products. And yes, it's good hard thing. So very important is to limit the attack surfaces. So you make, for example, hardening of your system and reduce everything what you not need in your product. So then you have lower number of vulnerabilities, and it's easier to maintain your product. And very important is to have a regular security update system. So you must bring up or roll out new software to your product. And then one other important step is to monitoring security events. So if an attacker try to log into your system and it fails, then you must report it and maybe have send an event to the server, for example. So in this slide is the following questions. How do I handle vulnerabilities? The first step is to identify and document the vulnerabilities. So if a library is affected, then you need a list of the dependencies of the vulnerability. So it's named software bill of materials. So all the software which is included in the library is affected then from this vulnerability too. The next step is to prioritize the vulnerability, which is depending on the risk. So it's a good idea to start with the high risk vulnerabilities and then go to the lower down. A very important thing is to fix this vulnerability. If there a patch available, then it's very good. If no patch is available, then you must maybe disable this function or find another solution. So in the next steps is to test the security of the digital product after the patching. So it's very important to check if the configuration is valid, or you have something is failed. Then you must fix them. And probably a very important step is to inform your customers about the potential risk. So you must have a monitoring and information system. And you need then secure rollout of the fixed software version. So at first you test it and then you make a rollout. And maybe if it's 1 day for the rollout, there's a new vulnerability, it's a good idea to roll out the software and then to start this process again. So then it's a very important question, in which category is my product? So the European Union says 90% of the products in the default category. So in the default category, you need a self-assessment. But if you see the examples like word processing, smart speakers, or hard drives, this mostly are parts in our embedded product or in our industrial product. So maybe the most embedded or industrial products are not in the default category, then it's more in the critical class 1 or in the critical class 2, which depends on the use case. So it's company affected from the Network and Information System Directive, then the product is the class 2, and you need a higher standard. So it's good idea to make a good self-assessment and a rotation that you can use then for a third-party assessment in the critical class 1 or 2. So now a little timeline for the Cyber Resilience Act. So the proposal has started in the end of 2022. And at the moment we are in the legal revision state for this regulation. So they want to try it to fulfill or to install it before the next parliament elections are. And after the fulfilled or the implementation of the regulation, then we have 12 months time to implement a vulnerability reporting and handling system for the products. So maybe before the fulfilled in 36 months, we have harmonized standards for which we can orient it to make an assessment of the products. So then we have a little recommendations for your security systems. So it's very important to start with the vulnerability system, to implement it and to install it in your development process. And another very important thing is the build environment. So you need private keys for signing the update bundles and the secure images for secure boot. And this is very critical, the handling of the private key in the build environment. So now I pass to my colleague, Yves.
Thank you, Mike. So yeah, that gives us a pretty good overview of the Cyber Resilience Act and the requirements that the Cyber Resilience Act brings to embedded systems. On my behalf, I will be showing you some suggested solutions. Of course, this is a little bit of marketing. We will show what kind of tools we have and that we recommend, but in general, these are the basic components that you will need to fulfill the requirements of the Cyber Resilience Act if your device is relevant for this Cyber Resilience Act. Of course, like Mike already said, the relevance is dependent on the purpose and the use of your system. And you actually define at the end how big the relevance is by defining the use case of the product in advance, and also by defining how long do you think this product will be in the market. And so there's a lot of discussions about, for example, the lifetime maintenance of a product. They started off the Cyber Resilience Act from the committee with a suggestion of 5 years of maintenance. But they are now discussing that this doesn't make sense because there's many devices that are out in the field for 10, 15, or even longer years. And so they are now working their way to a decision where they're saying, okay, it's going to be over the whole lifetime of the product. So yeah, I think long-term maintenance is the big topic, and we as PHTEC, we focused on that to add to our standard offerings of system on modules or single board computers. We decided to add all these cool tools that will help to fulfill these requirements. Okay. I'm muted. Okay. How do I? Here we go. Okay. So first of all, our general security offerings are called Finox security offerings. What do we try to do with that, and how does it help a customer? Well, it helps the customer to protect his know-how with all the measurements that we can take. It helps to apply, to be legally compliant. So, for example, fulfill the requirements of the Cyber Resilience Act. And also to protect your device against misuse. So maybe the device is not foreseen to do certain functionalities, and someone would try to hack this device and get into the device to use it for their own purpose. Well, that's something where we can help to protect from. Secure device networking, of course, if you have many connected devices in your local network or in a public network, then you want to make sure that this is secure as well. And to secure, of course, data and data transmission. So, for example, if you have money worth data that you're sending around from a payment system or something, then you want to make sure that nobody has access to this data or can manipulate this data. So these are all the mechanisms that we can support you with. So generally speaking, most of our customers are using Linux. So this is more focused on Linux BSP strategy. Regular software updates are very critical for fixing holes or vulnerabilities, as Mike also mentioned them, during the lifetime of a product. So you need to update your operating system in order to be able to fix these holes that appear after you already deployed your software. A secure and robust deployment approach is required for that. And of course, you need to be quick in order to take care of imminent risks. A well-known example for a hacking that had happened is the mirror botnet attack in 2016, for example, where millions of routers from the German telecom have been captured by hackers, and these routers were actually used to flood public servers with requests all the time, so that the servers were not available or even break down. And such an attack can be something that is just causing you money because your service is not available and customers cannot use your service that they are paying money for. And then that's also bad reputation for your service because it's not stable. But also, if it goes even further, hackers can take money from you or steal your know-how. So you want to make sure that things are secure in every way. And this is what the Cyber Resilience Act is also trying to take care of, because we were, as Mike already said, experiencing a lot of happenings in terms of attacks currently, and the EU is thinking that we need to regulate this. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen. Oh, Jesus. Sorry about that. I hope you could still follow. So, Linux BSP strategy. In general, we think sticking with mainline is the best way to go. If you're using Linux as your operating system, then you will probably know that Linux comes from the mainline where all the community of Linux works on. And typically they have LTS maintenance of their operating system, which fixes vulnerabilities and bugs during a stable release cycle. So sticking up to date with kernels reduce the risk because you can fix things very quickly, and vulnerabilities are continuously being fixed in mainline very quickly. and existing mechanisms are already there to improve the security of Linux. So Linux has many tools, as you can see down here, to, for example, firewalls or access control or adding multiple security layers to the kernel, but also APIs to support security hardware and to restrict resources and access through networks and so on. So there's a lot of tools that are being developed within the community to continuously help improve the security of Linux. Yeah, so in general, our strategy is that we start off with a vendor BSP. So when we have a new processor and we design it on our system on modules, we typically start off with the BSP or the Linux operating system that comes from the vendor, because it has the most features, as you can see here in this graph in the beginning. Mainline starts picking up on these new processes after a while, and then more and more features are being implemented also in mainline. Meanwhile, already the vendors have also understood how important mainline is, so they are also committing their work into mainline, and this also helps to add functionality for their processor and make it more usable for everybody. And at some point, the critical mass of features are reached within mainline for this certain processor. And then what we do as PHTEC, we switch to mainline, or at least have in parallel a release that's not just based on the vendor BSP, but also on a mainline BSP. And we do this because we think we can very easily continuously maintain the security of the operating system and provide nightly builds to our customers with the most recent vulnerability fixes. And we can do this for a very long time. And we are not dependent on any vendor BSPs or anything else. We can be completely independent working with mainline. So this is our typical strategy. In the beginning, when we have a new product, many customers come and they want to do new projects with us. And these new projects, they typically require the latest and greatest features from Linux. So what we do is we have a yearly release, at least, maybe sometimes even more often, to always have the most recent features available for you. But at some point, the new projects are not coming in anymore for these products, and then we have new products that bring the new projects. But the products that are then going out of the growth phase and going into the decline phase, they don't need the latest releases and most latest features, because there's no new designs, but they need a stable and continuous update mechanism to continuously get their security vulnerabilities fixed. So this is where we go into a 2-year release cycle. So every 2 years, we have at least one release. And this is also based on the Yocto LTS and LTS kernels, which continuously provide on a nightly, each night, new fixes and updates. In general, this is what we call our Securify distro. In this distribution, we make sure that we have all security relevant functionalities that needs to be supported for the processor, for example, or that make use of the processor security features, that these functions are fully implemented and they are easy to use. So we try to make of course, our system on module as attractive and easy to use as possible for you. And therefore, we look at all these vendor features and we make them easy and usable by creating scripts and tools that configure, and also by documenting everything that you need to do and best practices for making your system secure. So some topics of these are public key infrastructure. How do you handle your public key infrastructure? How do you create it? What are best practices here? Also, secure boot is something that is mostly required because you might want to make sure that only the operating system that you created can be booted on this device and not some other operating system that someone else wants to install onto it to maybe make use of this device. Also, how to create secure storage to get your secrets on the device and keep it secret. And also to handle network intrusion protection and create firewalls or set up firewalls and make sure that your network is secure. Also, access privileges can be configured. We give you best practices. We give you the tools to do this. And we can also help with hardening. So in general, the Securify distro covers, of course, the hardware so that you can use our SOMs or our single board computers. And it brings all the drivers that are required and also the operating system itself. And an assortment of middleware that we think is typically used, like Qt and whatever. Libraries, but also the secure features that I just mentioned. And on top of that, our customers can then add their application, add services, and create their user interface and whatever in order to make it a full product that is the final product. So after you've read all of our documentation, maybe we even helped you with consulting to make your operating system secure, you will have a snapshot for now that is secure of your operating system. So you can install it on your device and put it out into the field. But as we've learned from Mike also, we are obligated from the CRA to continuously monitor if our device stays secure, because there's known vulnerabilities that pop up. The operating system that was secure today might not be secure tomorrow because someone found a loophole and they can use it as an attack. So if you are doing the right thing and monitoring your device and monitoring the CVE databases for vulnerabilities, then you will realize that you might have to update your system. So, but updating your system, you need an operating system that is more recent than the one that is installed. So you need to somehow maintain your operating system in the background to always have the most recent Linux kernel versions that have all the fixes. So you need software lifecycle management. And in order to monitor if your device in the field is affected by vulnerabilities, you need CVE analysis. And in order to update the device with the new release that you have, you need to update in device management. And in order to use, now I'm continuing, in order to do update and device management, you need some way to connect to your device in a secure way. And so you need provisioning, which brings you all the keys and the certificates onto your device that you need to identify your device to the server and the server to the device to make sure it's a secure connection and nobody else will try to update your device with their software. So this is all the bunch you need to have when you want a continuous security and not just a snapshot for now. Snapshot for now is easy. Continuous brings a lot of additional features that you require. But fortunately, PHTEC has thought of all of this and prepared already a lot of cool things. So benefits of our fileline BSP and software lifecycle management. I already talked about the fileline BSP, how we maintain our BSP. And we have an additional offering to this where we can take the customer hardware, put it into our test farm, in addition to all our devices that we continuously test in our test farm. And then we can actually ensure that the customer gets a fully maintained BSP on a nightly basis with all LTS updates every day, already running on his hardware. And also fully tested according to the requirements that the customer has in terms of interfaces that need to work or, I don't know, any functionalities in Linux that are then tested. So the advantage of this is, of course, you have an up-to-date system and you can take the technological lead by having the latest and greatest. but you can also keep your system secure by being able to fix vulnerabilities quickly. And you can make updates very easy and safe because we test the whole BSP for you, even on your hardware, based on the nightly builds that we do. And so the risk of breaking functionality in the field by updating the device with the new BSP is reduced to a minimum. So this is kind of the whole infrastructure that we are using. In this column here, you can see the typical Linux mainline. As you all know, Linux continuously adds functionality and code to the mainline kernel, and you have the latest and greatest master running here. But of course, this is not stable. So you wouldn't want to base your product on one of these minor releases here that are just changing all the time, and features are functioning, not functioning. So you want to make sure that you have a stable base for your product to base your software on. And this is why the mainline typically announces LTS releases, like here, the Dunfell, which is quite old, but there's also, and kernel 5.4. Currently, we are at 6.1 and 6.6, I think, and also newer Yocto versions. But in general, there's always some LTS releases being announced. And these LTS releases are stable. So what we do is we take these LTS releases and we say, okay, we need these stable releases, and we make all the adaptations. This is the PHTEC column here. We make all the adaptations for this release to run on our hardware, and we call it a PHTEC release. But it's actually a mainline LTS release, which is just being modified to run on our hardware. And then we test it. And this is the customer column, being transferred to the customer. So you can take these releases, they are pre-tested, add your application, add functionality, packages and whatever, and test the whole thing. And then deploy it to your device. Now, in parallel, mainline continuously updates the stable release with vulnerability fixes and also functional fixes. But the general functionality of the release still stays the same. This doesn't have major changes. And so this is quite stable. And so we take these updates, these LTS updates that happen typically on a nightly basis, and we take this and we pull it from the mainline and we run it and test it on our hardware. But we can also do this on your hardware. So if a customer asks us to take his hardware and put it into our test farm, we can also do it that as well. And then we test the whole thing and we provide it to our customers. Now the customers can take it, add their application, test it again to make sure that their specific functionality is still working. And we can define what we are testing here also for the customer. And then these updates can be deployed. So if you have a vulnerability coming up, you have a way to react very fast, take the LTS update from us, which hopefully fixes the vulnerability that came up that you found, and then you can have a very secure way to deploy this vulnerability or this update to your device. In parallel, if you want to, of course, analyze your device if in the field, if there are any vulnerabilities, you will need some functionality in terms of CVE analysis, common vulnerability analysis. These vulnerabilities are maintained in databases by the NIST, for example, and of course, like Mike also said, through the CRA, you are also obligated to provide information about any vulnerabilities that you have discovered on your device. And these reports that you put out will also be put into the NIST. So there's currently a big discussion in the EU Parliament about the term of known exposures or unknown exposures. So most of the time, it's a problem if a company discovers an exposure, a vulnerability of the device, but nobody else knows about it. Does the company have to make this public? Then that's a problem, because then you make a loophole in your device public. So there's big discussions. What are the relevance? When do you have to tell this? this is all not fully settled. So currently it's going into the direction where they are saying, yes, you have to first find a fix, and then you have to commit this information to your device and fix it on your device, and then you can make it public, or you should make it public. This is typically the way they are talking right now, but it's still much in discussion. Well, nevertheless, there is a database that holds all publicly known vulnerabilities, and we have a mechanism to scan the operating system if any of these vulnerabilities apply to the operating system. So we do this for our own BSP, but of course, this can also be done for your BSP, as I showed you in the last slide. If your device is in our test farm and your BSP is being tested, then we can run these CVE tests also on your device. We make sure that, of course, we don't bombard you with CVEs. We filter based on what your application is, on how your kernel is configured, how your file system is configured. We do not send you any CVEs based on any libraries that you are not using. This is how such a report looks like. So it gives you information about the attack vector, for example. So if your device is not in a network and this, for example, this vulnerability is only through network, then you don't have to consider this as a threat to your device. But also we have information about the availability of about the strength of this vulnerability, and we also give you suggestions on how to fix this. For example, we tell you, hey, please update, use the newest release that we provide, and the vulnerability will be fixed within this release. So we make it very easy for you to maintain your product and to know what to do if you're actually affected by a vulnerability. Now we come to the updated device management. We've now taken care of having an up-to-date system, and we also now know when we have a CVE on your a vulnerability on your device. So now you have to react. You have to update your device with your newest software that fixes this. For that, you need update and device management. So what we do as one solution, we have actually two solutions. One solution is an open source solution. It's called Rauk, which is a client that runs on our operating system, on our devices. And it actually takes care of all the update of the device. So we typically recommend to have two partitions on the device, one being the A partition, other one being the B partition. And this helps to update only one partition and keep the old partition with the old operating system as a fallback mechanism in case the new update fails and the system doesn't boot. You don't want to have your device in the field being updated, I don't know, somewhere in a windmill or something, generating power for many people somewhere in the field, and then your update fails and the system is not booting anymore and you do not have access to this device. Then you have to drive to the location and figure out how you can fix the problem. But with this A/B partition system and fail-safe system, you can just, the system itself will switch to the old partition and start the old operating system. And then you have the chance to still connect to your device and fix the problem remotely, hopefully. Now, Rauk also enables you to not remotely just update your devices, but also locally using a USB stick or an SD card. So you actually just insert the USB stick into the device, and if Rauk finds a signed update bundle, it needs to be signed, or we recommend to sign it, and identifies that this is a valid update bundle that should be installed onto the device, then it will do this. It will pull the image out of the USB stick and install it on the A or B partition. So this is all maintained by open source. Pengutronics is taking care of this development mainly, and it's been in the market for very long, and it's quite robust. And in addition to that, we also need to connect to the devices and manage the update process. And this can be done using the Hawkbit server, for example. We have prepared a Hawkbit instance on a virtual machine, Docker image, And this can easily connect to all the devices that you have in the field. And then you can see the status of the device, the current version of operating system, or I don't know, not even operating system, but also applications, and maybe Docker images. So you can see all the status of this, and then you can determine if your device needs an update, and then you can trigger the update. You can even do managed updates, do rollouts, maybe do test updates first for a certain number of devices before you roll out to all devices. You can filter devices, group them by maybe region. You want to only update devices in the night when nobody is in a factory, and you have a factory in the US, you have one in Europe, then you want to do it to different times. So you can handle all of this with Hawkbit server. So the connection between the Hawkbit server and the device is typically encrypted using TLS, encrypted and using TLS for authentication between the two. So you can make sure nobody else can connect to your device. And the update images are typically also encrypted and signed, so not anybody can send any update packages. And of course, the device sends status information back to the Hawkbit server in order for you to be aware of the current status of the device and the update process. Typically, this is the setup where you have a server somewhere with Hawkbit installed. Then you have all your devices in the field with Rauk, and then you have some sort of user interface that you connect to the update server with, and then you can visualize the whole process. So this is what we offer. We offer a pre-configured update server in a Docker image, and you can install it wherever you like. We can set up and update the server for you if you like, but in general, you have to host it by yourself. The integrated update client is in our BSP and always tested, so you will always be guaranteed to have the Rauk installed and tested. We can do, of course, workshops and consulting, and we can also do provisioning of the keys and certificates that are required already onto our product prior to delivery to you. So if you order a system on module or a single board computer or a finished product from us, and you say you need the credentials for the device to connect to a Hawkbit server, we can insert those keys and also take care of other measurements. There's another solution. It's a more high-end solution. It's hosted by IoT Rocket, which is the company who created this whole solution. And this solution is, it has a lot more features, of course, access management, health monitoring of the devices. It, of course, does software updates, and also it has maintenance tools for the device so that you can access the device via remote client, for example, using SSH. And the whole thing is hosted on AWS servers. So you have a great infrastructure of servers all over the world. You do not have to have any concerns about bandwidth or availability of servers throughout the world. So if you have a project that's globally, and you don't want to host your system by yourself, your update system, maybe this is also a good solution. It has a lot of features. It can scale from just one device to 100,000 devices by enabling mass batch operations and things like that. They have a very flexible payment system that also adapts to small numbers and high numbers so that you are not initially overwhelmed with high costs. Software updates over the air, of course, also supporting AB, safe and secure updates, remote file access and debugging. So this is where you connect via SSH or VPN tunnel, and you can change files on the system and things like that. You can onboard foreign systems. So if you have your own, I don't know, data visualization system that gets data from the clients, maybe you want to share credentials and make sure that you don't have to have credentials for every service that connects to your device. Maybe it's okay to just have one credential using this credential and then sharing it with all the other servers. And then you don't have the hassle of having multiple certificates and keys on the board. Of course, like I said, we can pre-provision keys onto the device, and yeah, it's hosted worldwide on AWS. This is a little overview of all the feature richness of our open source solution with Rauk and Hawkbit compared to IoT device suite, where there's a lot more features, of course. And so, for example, they have things like SIM card management with wherever SIM, where you can activate the SIM card on a device if you have one, if it's connected via LTE, for example. And yeah, you can manage the SIM card, shut it off, set limits of data throughput to ensure costs regulations and things like that. Provisioning, yeah. As I mentioned, you will need provisioning in order to inject keys and make sure that certificates are on the device so that it can connect to your device. This is most important when you want to talk to the device and make it secure. So what we can do in our offerings, we have a secure area in our production here in Germany, and the secure area is completely shut off from the outside. Only certified colleagues here at PHTEC have access to this area, and they are there enabled to insert keys using them from an HSM, for example, that are provided by the customers. Or we can also enable root of trust from customers that we get. Typically, the customer keeps the root of trust by himself, and we just insert the keys, the public or private keys, without looking at them. So we only pass them on into the device. But of course, this is kind of a trust thing. So this is why we are certified to take care of all these things and to have a secure area. Secure boot activation is something that is important if you want to make sure that your device cannot be booted on any other software other than the software that you created for it. Secure key storage, of course, into TPMs or secure elements is no problem. Also into the processor itself, they sometimes have areas where you can burn keys into. File system and directory encryption. If you need any encryption of your data, this typically happens within the installation process of the data in the production, and we can take care of that. And of course, we can deactivate critical features that might create an entry point for hackers which want to attack the device. So for example, JTAG is typically something you want to make sure it's not available as a debug interface, because through this you have access to everything, the local storage, the processor itself. Also boot fuses to make sure the device can only boot from one certain boot source is also very helpful, so that, yeah, not everything is possible with the device. And yeah, so we can create keys for the different secure elements that are available. Yeah, we can create certificates together with you as a customer, use HSMs or Nitro keys or smart cards, for example. Yeah, and we can register devices and tell them to, I don't know, connect to any kind of service that you might foresee for the device. So for example, if you have a Hawkbit server somewhere sitting, we can insert the address of that server and tell the device once it's online to directly connect. Yeah, so this pretty much wraps up all the components that you need to maintain a software embedded system from our perspective. And here we've created some packages as an overview of our Finox offering. And of course, it starts off with a basic offering that is free. Whenever you purchase a system on module, you get this for free. And we want to make sure that we only collect payments for things that we don't do for everybody, but do it specifically for the customer. So this is the basic stuff that we can do for every customer. The update and mechanism with Rauk and Hawkbit is something every customer can use. It's open source, and we don't charge for it. We just maintain it and make our product more attractive and easy to use for you. And in addition, also the Securify tools that we created and the documentation that I mentioned to make your operating system secure is also completely free available. And we also provide some free consulting. Yeah, here it says 1 hour. Typically, it's a little bit more. This is not a problem. Yeah, so, but in the advanced offering, this is the next column, we add we add consulting. We add that we specifically help you to secure your device. This is general secure features, and this is more specific to your board. And this is where, of course, we have to charge you on an hourly basis, but you get the onboarding of the device. So we insert keys if you like this, and we can add certificates and things like that onto the device in production. We can pre-configure the update mechanism, for example, set up the host server that manages your devices and also add credentials. And we can also do the configuration of the operating system for you and secure it for you. So you don't have to read all the documentation. We can use our own tools to also secure the device for you. And then this is typically, like I said, the snapshot where you have a one-time secure system. But if you want to have a maintained system, there's more things required. Like I just explained, you need the software lifecycle management, the common vulnerability monitoring, where you look at the vulnerabilities and onboarding of the device, of course, maybe even a more sophisticated cloud-based hosted system for updating your devices, and of course the maintenance of the security features within your device. And this is also based on a cost on an hourly basis. So, but we have, for example, the software lifecycle management. We have fixed pricing. So, for example, 18,000 euros is software lifecycle management, where we take your device, put it in our test farm, and then this is the yearly cost to have a continuously maintained operating system, fully tested according to your requirements, and even functionality breaks fixed up to a certain extent. So this is for 18,000 euros, for example. So if you compare this for one resource, continuously maintaining your operating system in a test farm, I think that's a good price. So if you put this all together, and we've just made an example calculation with also this hosting service for the IoT device suite, we come up with 500 units per year, for example. We come up with one-time setup costs for 9,000 euros, and then 30,000 euros yearly maintenance costs. This includes everything. So this is like a trouble-free, I take it and I leave offering. And if you compare this to the amount of developers you might need for all of these features, I think 30,000 euros is a good offering. We can do this because we scale it. We can offer this to many customers, and we only need to maintain a BSP once, and we can serve many customers with this BSP for a certain product. And we can also use our test system, not just to test our own boards and hardware, but also for the customer boards. So compared to a customer that would have to do it all alone for his own project, for one single project, the cost would be much higher. So yeah, so that pretty much wraps up my presentation. I hope you liked it, and I hope it was not too much marketing and also very informative of all the typical tools that you might need to fulfill the upcoming regulations.